Have you ever wondered why some nations, some people, or even some moments in your own life feel hidden, overlooked, or misunderstood, yet they carry within them a strength and a beauty only Allah truly knows? Have you ever thought that what seems small, weak, or forgotten in the eyes of people may actually be elevated and honored by Allah in ways we cannot see? In a world that chases visibility, power, and fame, Islam teaches us to look deeper, to trust in the unseen, and to know with certainty that Allah's wisdom is beyond our limited understanding. Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah 2:21-6, "But perhaps you hate a thing and it is good for you, and perhaps you love a thing and it is bad for you, and Allah knows, while you know not." This verse is a lens through which we must look at everything in life, including how we view people, places, and events in the world. Sometimes what we ignore is exactly what Allah is using to shape the future of the Ummah. The hidden can carry the heaviest strength. The Prophet Muhammad experienced this deeply in his own life when he was driven out of Makkah, his beloved homeland, his place of birth, the city of the Kaaba. Many may have thought this was the end, but it was through that painful migration to Medina, a city not yet known, that the Islamic civilization began to flourish. What seemed like a loss was actually the beginning of a divine victory. Today, when we look at Iran, many only see what is presented on the surface, political headlines, tensions, or theological differences. But the believer must look deeper. Behind the noise is a nation that, despite pressure, has held firmly to its identity, preserved its religious culture, and remained rooted in Islamic heritage. That in itself is a hidden superpower. It's easy to be strong when the world is clapping for you, but to remain firm when the world turns its back on you, that is a strength given only by Allah. The Prophet was once mocked, ridiculed, and even physically harmed by those around him. Yet he stood firm, not because he was loud or powerful in the worldly sense, but because he was supported by Allah. His strength came from within, from his trust in the unseen, from his knowledge that his mission was not measured by people's approval, but by Allah's guidance. Iran, with all its trials, still holds on to values that many parts of the Muslim world are slowly forgetting. Strong family ties, deep respect for scholars, a culture that still honors the Qur'an and Hadith in public and private life. The streets echo with remembrance. Youth memorize the Qur'an not just as a ritual, but as a way of life. And this is all happening not in ease, but under pressure. That's not weakness. That's quiet, hidden strength. When the Prophet was in the cave of Thawr with Abu Bakr al-Inshar, as their enemies hunted them down, fear filled the air. Abu Bakr worried for the life of the Prophet, but the Prophet, calm and full of faith, said the words recorded forever in Surah At-Tawbah 9:40, "Do not grieve, indeed Allah is with us." In the most isolated, vulnerable moment, he reminded his companion and all of us that Allah's presence is the greatest strength we can have. Too often we overlook places and people simply because they are not celebrated. But Islam is not about what the world celebrates. Islam is about what Allah values, and Allah values hearts that turn to Him in hardship. He honors those who remain patient under trial. He raises those who hold on to truth, even when it is unpopular. If a nation holds on to its faith through isolation, that is not failure, that is divine resilience. The Prophet once said, "Whoever humbles himself for the sake of Allah, Allah will raise him." Muslim, think about that. Sometimes being unseen by the world is actually a sign that you are being seen by Allah. Sometimes being overlooked is Allah's way of protecting you and preparing you for something greater. Iran's hidden strength is not in its politics, but in its perseverance, its preservation of faith, and its patient endurance. So ask yourself, do you judge strength by visibility, or do you understand that real power is often hidden? Just like the seed under the soil growing roots before it ever breaks through the surface. Just like the believer who prays in the last part of the night, unseen by people but honored by the angels. Just like the Prophet who built a nation from a place of migration, not dominance. Let us take a lesson from this, that we too must never seek recognition in the eyes of people. We must instead seek sincerity in the eyes of Allah, that even if no one sees your effort, Allah sees. Even if the world misunderstands you, Allah understands. And even if you feel small, Allah may be preparing something great through you. Let your heart trust in the unseen. Let your soul find peace in knowing that Allah is a Latif, the one who works in gentle, subtle ways. Just as He brought light from the cave, just as He turned migration into victory, just as He raises those who are patient in hardship, He can raise you. He can raise entire nations. So never dismiss what looks hidden, because in the plan of Allah, the hidden may hold the future of this ummah. Have you ever wondered why the Ummah, despite having over 1 billion people, still feels divided, weak and disconnected? Why do we let national borders, ethnic labels and sectarian differences blind us from the deeper truth that we are one body, one family, one nation under Allah? This division is not from Islam. It is a wound inflicted by time, pride and misunderstanding. Yet the healing begins when we return to what Allah and His Messenger taught us, that unity is not just an ideal, it is a divine obligation. In the Qur'an, Allah reminds us in Surah Al-Hujurat 49:10, indeed the believers are but brothers, so make settlement between your brothers, and fear Allah that you may receive mercy. This is not a suggestion, it is a command. When we see a part of our ummah being criticized, isolated or misunderstood, like Iran, we must ask ourselves, are we contributing to the healing or to the division? The Prophet Muhammad showed us countless times that unity is not about agreeing on every detail, but about loving and protecting each other despite differences. In the early years of Islam, when the Muslims migrated to Medina, He united the Ansar and Muhajirun, two very different communities, into one ummah. He did not erase their identities, but He bound their hearts together with faith. Today, many of us are quick to judge entire nations, label people based on their school of thought, or mock those who practice differently. But when we do that, we are falling into the trap of shaitan. His goal has always been to divide us, because divided hearts are weak, but united hearts are weak. But united hearts are a fortress. Iran, with its unique culture and history, is still our brother in faith. The people who pray, fast, raise their children with Qur'an and sacrifice for Islam, they are part of us. Whether we speak the same language or not, we face the same Qibla. There was a moment during the Treaty of Hudaybiyah when the companions felt hurt, even humiliated by the terms. But the Prophet accepted the treaty with wisdom and patience, knowing that short-term compromise would bring long-term unity and peace. And it did. Soon after, people entered Islam in crowds. That teaches us, sometimes we need to step back from emotion and look with the eyes of tawakkul, trust in Allah's bigger plan. The strength of the Muslim world lies in its diversity. From Indonesia to Morocco, from Turkey to Iran, we are a tapestry of cultures. But that diversity is not a weakness. It's a sign of Allah's creative power. What breaks us is not the difference in customs, but the disease in our hearts, when we let ego and suspicion replace compassion and understanding. Allah did not create one mold for all Muslims. He created a global ummah so we could learn from one another, benefit each other, and unite under the banner of La ilaha illallah. When the Prophet received delegations from other tribes and regions, he treated each one with respect and dignity, even when their customs were unfamiliar. He welcomed people from different backgrounds with warmth, because he knew that Islam is broader than culture. It is a mercy to all the worlds. When we exclude others from our hearts because of where they come from or how they differ, we are shrinking the mercy of Islam down to our own narrow views. Iran, often viewed only through political lenses, is more than just a headline. Its people have held tightly to Islamic values under intense pressure. Families still value modesty, students still pursue Islamic studies, and hearts still remember Allah through hardship. This is not something to ignore, it's something to respect. And when we recognize this, we begin to see them not as others, but as brothers. This shift in mindset can begin the healing of our fractured ummah. There was a time when a companion made fun of another for his mother being black. The Prophet turned to him and said, "You are a man who still has ignorance in you." He didn't accept any form of superiority or division based on race or background. How then can we accept division based on geography or politics? Our bond is deeper than flags. It is written in our shahada. We are not here to judge the hearts of others, for that is only known to Allah. But we are responsible for the intentions in our own hearts. Are we working towards unity or fueling division? Are we making excuses for our fellow Muslims or finding faults? Iran, like every part of the Ummah, has a role to play. Their strengths may differ from ours, but that's the beauty of the body. Each limb serves a purpose. Allah says in Surah Al-Imran 3:10, "The hold firmly to the rope of Allah, all together, and do not become divided." This rope is the Quran. the Sunnah and the path of submission to the one true Lord. When we hold that rope together, no enemy can harm us. But when we let go, when we point fingers and mock, we lose our grip and the Ummah suffers. Let your heart be wider than your opinions. Let your love for Allah and His Messenger be the glue that binds you to your brothers and sisters around the world. If we truly want strength, it won't come from wealth or numbers. It will come when we see each other as one body, when the pain of one nation becomes the concern of all, when the joy of one family becomes a cause for all to celebrate. And always remember, the Prophet told us that the believers in their mutual love and compassion are like one body. If one part feels pain, the whole body suffers with it. So let us feel that pain. Let us respond not with criticism, but with dua, not with division, but with sincere intention to unite. That is where our hidden superpower lies. Not in being the same, but in being united under the same sky, the same Qur'an, and the same law. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, why does Allah place the light of knowledge in unexpected places? Why is it that certain nations, despite hardship, become guardians of wisdom and learning, while others drown in material comfort and forget the purpose of life? In Islam, knowledge is not just information. It is a light, a trust, a responsibility. And Allah chooses whom He wills to carry this sacred trust. When we look at Iran, beyond the surface of political stories, we see a deep legacy of Islamic knowledge, preserved, honored, and passed down with sincerity. Allah says in Surah Az-Zumar 39:9, are those who know equal to those who do not know. This is a powerful reminder that the people of knowledge are not the same as those who walk blindly. True knowledge softens the heart, strengthens the character, and draws a person closer to Allah. And wherever this knowledge is preserved and honored, there is a divine mercy at work, even if the world does not notice it. When the Prophet Muhammad was in Makkah, the Quraysh labeled him a poet, a magician, a madman. They rejected his message, but he was receiving the greatest knowledge ever given to mankind, the Qur'an. Though he was unlettered, Allah gave him wisdom that would change the world forever. Knowledge in Islam is not about titles or status. It's about sincerity, understanding, and connection to Allah. Iran, despite years of hardship and isolation, remains a stronghold of Islamic scholarship. In its universities, seminaries, and mosques, the Qur'an is studied deeply, Hadith is memorized, and the Arabic language is preserved for generations to connect with the words of Allah. This quiet strength often goes unnoticed, but in the sight of Allah, it is a form of hidden power. A society that nurtures its scholars and protects its religious identity, even when the world applies pressure, is showing a form of victory that goes beyond politics. It is a spiritual triumph. When the Prophet migrated to Medina, one of the first things he established was a masjid and a place of learning, Safa. He knew that a nation can only rise with knowledge. He used to sit with his companions, teaching them the meanings of the Qur'an, instilling in them a mindset of reflection and submission to Allah. These were the seeds of a civilization that would eventually reach every corner of the earth. In many parts of the world today, we see the opposite. Modernity has replaced sacred knowledge with distractions. Entertainment has replaced education. But Iran, with all its flaws, like any other nation, still upholds the value of Islamic scholarship. Families raise their children to memorize Qur'an. Elders still quote hadith in everyday conversation. The culture may differ from yours, but the essence is the same. Islam, knowledge and reverence for Allah's words. Remember when the Prophet captured the prisoners of Badr, he offered freedom to any of them who could teach 10 Muslims how to read and write. This was his priority, education. Not weapons, not wealth, education. That's how nations rise. That's how hearts are shaped. When you nurture minds with the remembrance of Allah, you create a generation that can withstand any storm. The Persian influence in the Islamic Golden Age is undeniable. Many of our greatest scholars, Imam al-Ghazali, Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi, Imam al-Tusi, came from the lands we now call Iran. They wrote books that are still studied in Islamic institutions around the world. This is not just history, it is a sign that Allah places His light where He wills, and that we must not be arrogant in thinking knowledge only comes from the familiar. We must humble ourselves and appreciate the efforts of all parts of the Ummah. When the Prophet sent letters to the leaders of different empires inviting them to Islam, he was acknowledging their influence, but also calling them toward the true knowledge, the knowledge of La ilaha illallah. The true strength of a people lies not in their flags or armies, but in their ability to understand this kalima, to live by it, and to teach it to the next generation. So ask yourself, what do we value in our own lives? Are we investing our time in learning the Qur'an? Are we encouraging our children to understand the hadith? Are we supporting scholars and institutions that preserve authentic knowledge? Because if we don't, we risk losing one of the greatest blessings Allah can give to a people, the blessing of understanding His deen. The Prophet said, when Allah wishes good for someone, He grants him understanding of the religion. Bukhari and Muslim. If you see a community clinging to knowledge, respect them. If you see a nation producing scholars, making sacrifices for Islamic education, value them, because they are doing the work that keeps the flame of Islam burning, even in the darkest times. Let Iran's legacy of scholarship remind us that knowledge is not bound by borders or sects. It is honored by Allah and preserved through hearts that are sincere. Let us stop focusing only on the material and start valuing the spiritual. Let us return to seeking knowledge, not for debate or status, but to draw closer to the one who knows all. And let us place our trust in Allah that wherever His knowledge is preserved and practiced, there is hope, there is strength, and there is light. May our hearts be among those that seek, love, and live by the knowledge that leads us to Him. Have you ever asked yourself why some people or nations go through intense hardship and yet emerge with stronger hearts, firmer identities, and unwavering faith in Allah? Is it not a sign from the Most Merciful that strength is not measured by ease, but by the ability to remain patient and committed through trial after trial? Allah does not test the weak with heavy burdens. He tests those He loves, those He wishes to raise in ranks. Steadfastness under pressure is one of the greatest signs of hidden strength. And for the believer, every hardship is a doorway to divine reward. In Surah Al-Baqarah 2:15-5, Allah says, "And we will surely test you with something of fear and hunger and a loss of wealth and lives and fruits, but give glad tidings to the patient." These tests are not punishments, they are opportunities. Opportunities to show the world that the believer does not crumble, but rises stronger with every difficulty, trusting in Allah's perfect plan. When the Prophet Muhammad was surrounded by enemies at the Battle of the Trench, outnumbered and outarmed, the believers dug the trench with his bare hands, shivering in hunger and cold. Yet, in the middle of this difficulty, the Prophet struck a rock and proclaimed glad tidings of the conquest of Yemen, Persia, and the Roman lands. He saw beyond the hardship because he trusted in the unseen help of Allah. Look at Iran today. Despite decades of isolation, sanctions, and global opposition, it has not lost its will, its identity, or its faith. This is not a political endorsement. It is a reflection on resilience, on the strength of a people who continue to live, grow, worship, and educate their children under pressure that many of us would find unbearable. This kind of strength doesn't come from armies or wealth. It comes from a heart that refuses to surrender to hopelessness, a soul that places its affairs in the hands of Allah, and a nation that chooses to carry its values no matter the cost. The Prophet endured years of social and economic boycott in the valley of Abu Talib. He and his followers were cut off from food, trade, and society. They were left in hunger and pain. Yet their faith never broke. When asked to compromise on his message, he replied, "By Allah, if they placed the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left to abandon this cause, I would not abandon it." That is what true strength looks like, not comfort, but conviction. We often misunderstand power. We think it's loud, glamorous, and overwhelming, but in reality, true power is silent, patient, and deeply rooted in faith. Allah grants real strength to those who endure with sabr, who hold tightly to His rope when others let go, who choose prayer over panic and principle over popularity. Iran's steadiness under pressure teaches us something most of us have forgotten. Dignity is not in being accepted by the world. It is in being firm for the sake of Allah, even when the world rejects you. Remember when the Prophet entered Makkah during the conquest, with the victorious army, not in arrogance, but in humility. His head was bowed low, and he forgave those who had harmed him. That moment was not the beginning of his strength. It was the fruit of years of endurance, humiliation, and rejection. He taught us that what matters most is not how quickly you win, but how patiently you hold on until Allah brings the victory. Iran, like many tested nations, reminds us that pressure is not always a punishment. Sometimes it's a polishing. Allah says in Surah Zumar 39:10, "Indeed, the patient will be given their reward without account." That means beyond imagination. So when a people are patient in the face of trials, when they refuse to lose their faith, their family values, or their Islamic principles, we must open our eyes and learn that is hidden power in its truest form. The Prophet was once asked which people are tested the most. He replied, "The prophets, then those most like them, then those most like them." A person is tested according to the strength of his religion, Trinity. So when you see a nation being tested severely, do not look down on them, look up to them. It could be that Allah is elevating them in a way we do not see. It could be that their patience is worth more than our comfort. We need to return to this understanding. We must teach our children and our communities that hardship is not something to fear, it is something to prepare for, to endure with faith, and to trust that Allah's wisdom is always present, even when hidden. The believers of the past built civilizations while they were under siege. They memorized Qur'an while in chains. They stood firm while the winds of the dunya tried to blow them away. The Prophet never promised ease in this world, but he promised success to those who trust in Allah. He said, "Be mindful of Allah and Allah will protect you. Be mindful of Allah and you will find Him in front of you." Tirmidhi, this is the foundation of all strength, knowing that Allah is with you, especially when the world seems against you. So let Iran's steadfastness remind us of what we are capable of when we truly rely on Allah. Let their patience revive our own, and let us stop measuring power by what fazed. Real power is in faith, in resilience, in truth, and in the silent, beautiful sabr of a heart that whispers, "Hasbunallah mehel." Allah is sufficient for us, and He is the best disposer of affairs. Have you ever wondered why Allah hides true strength in the places we least expect? Why some nations are tested so heavily, yet still stand tall with their dignity intact? Allah does not always place power in wealth, in numbers, or in global recognition. Sometimes He places it quietly in the heart of a people, in the depth of their endurance, and in their unwavering faith. This is a reminder to every Muslim: never judge power by its surface, because true power belongs to Allah alone, and He gives it to whom He wills, in ways beyond human comprehension. In the Qur'an, Allah tells us, "Say, O Allah, owner of sovereignty, you give sovereignty to whom you will, and you take sovereignty away from whom you will. You honor whom you will, and you humble whom you will. In your hand is alone. Indeed, you are over all things competent." When we reflect on this ayah, we begin to see the world differently. We stop chasing what others chase and start trusting the one who controls everything. The life of the Prophet Muhammad is a living proof of this divine truth. When he was alone in the cave of Tyro with Abu Bakr Aray, the world thought he had lost everything. The Quraysh hunted him down, believing they had the upper hand. But Allah says in Surah At-Talbah 9:40, "Do not grieve. Indeed, Allah is with us." That moment in a dark cave, far from the glamour of power, was in reality one of the most powerful in human history, because the help of Allah was near. Today, when we look at Iran, a country often isolated, misunderstood, and tested by the world, we must ask ourselves, what does Allah see in this land that perhaps we overlook? This is not about politics or sectarianism. It's about learning to recognize hidden strength, the kind that comes from resilience, faith, and submission to Allah's plan. Iran has faced tremendous pressure, sanctions, and global opposition, yet it remains firm. This firmness is not rooted in arrogance. It is rooted in something greater, the will to stand by its values, even when the world is against them. The Prophet taught us through his life that true power does not lie in the approval of the people, but in the approval of Allah. At the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, many of the companions were upset. They saw the treaty as a loss. But the Prophet, guided by Allah, knew that sometimes the appearance of defeat is the beginning of a great victory. Soon after, the doors of Makkah opened without battle. Victory belongs to those who trust Allah, even when things seem unclear. This is what we see in the silent strength of Iran. Despite facing intense economic hardship and global pressure, the people continue to pray, fast, raise their families, and hold on to their Islamic traditions. They recite the Qur'an, they mourn for the oppressed, and they educate their youth in a system that still values modesty, family, and faith. Is this not a form of strength we have overlooked? Is this not a type of power that many advanced nations have long lost? The Prophet lived in Makkah for 13 years without political power, but he changed hearts. His strength was not in palaces, but in patience. His power was not in weapons, but in his unwavering trust in Allah. When he was stoned in Taif and bled until his sandals filled with blood, the angels offered to crush the people, but he refused. Why? Because real strength is not in revenge, it's in mercy, in vision, and in knowing that Allah sees what no one else sees. Sometimes Allah hides strength in struggle. He gives a people hardship to purify them, to elevate them, and if they remain grateful, they become powerful, not in worldly terms, but in the sight of Allah. Iran, like many tested nations, teaches us that dignity lies not in wealth, but in sabr. That honor is not granted by the media, but by Allah alone. The believers who suffer and stay firm are the ones whose names are written in light in the Akhirah. The Prophet once said, "How wonderful is the affair of the believer, for his affairs are all good. If something good happens to him, he is grateful, and that is good for him. If something harmful happens to him, he is patient, and that is good for him." This is the secret behind strength that doesn't break under pressure. This is the hidden superpower that few notice, because it is not loud, it is not showy, and it is not advertised. To my dear brothers and sisters, we must look with the eyes of the heart. We must stop measuring power by temporary things. Iran's example should remind us that Allah honors people who turn to Him, who hold on to their faith no matter what. That kind of strength cannot be taken by any force on earth. And if you too turn to Allah with sincerity, with sabr, and with full tawakkul, you will discover that you too carry a hidden strength within your soul. Do not underestimate what Allah can do with the one who trusts Him. Do not lose hope when the world seems against you. Just as the Prophet stood alone in the early days of Islam, yet transformed the entire world, you too can rise. Because Allah is still in control, always has been, always will be, and He gives true strength to those who believe.